Wow, amazing. I admire you for that, my friend, a lot. Anyone else, something God's done for you, in you, or through you you'd like to share with us?
All right.
Yes.
Yeah. Here's Chris want to share. We've been pretty blessed lately with everything going on with us. And then having the opportunity to do the sermon last week. The whole week was pretty crazy. It started on a Monday when our landlord came over and said, all right, we're selling the house. To the next Monday, when we were in contract to buy a new house, to prepare it for a sermon, it was just all, it was really a filling week, and it was a lot to handle, but it was just everything we needed all at the same time, so it was just really been a big blessing over the last couple weeks. And there's been so many people, my parents, my friends, my wife's parents, everybody we know has just said whatever we can do to help, we'll be there. And it's like really filling as not knowing what to do to having overwhelming support from every angle. Really nice.
And in case you missed part of his speech right there, their new house is in escrow out on Golden Valley, and it's a huge house with an acre of land. They're going to be able to do all kinds of fun stuff out there.
I get my own bedroom there.
Yes. Hey, and Brooke's excited to kick you out from time to time. Hey, we'll be having church stuff out there on the property. So clean out your pickup trucks, because I'm sure we'll be having a church moving day, won't we?
Probably.
Yes, we get to help with that. So that's exciting. Yeah. Yeah, they get to have a huge mortgage and stuff, so it's really fun.
I finally get a music room.
Yes, good for you. Yeah, that's exciting. Now they got a good deal on it. It's already got equity in it from the amount they're going to pay, and so that's really good.
It's a nice Catholic older couple that's retired into a retirement community. She even had a prayer room inside the house.
Wow.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
nice.
amazing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and they loved James and I and our parents and the 15 people we brought to see it. I don't do anything in small numbers.
Yeah.
I mean, who in this market takes less money than another offer?
Yeah.
Just to
They
sell?
did. They had an offer that's
So.
$10,000 more than ours and most of ours.
Oh.
Yeah.
So it was pretty amazing.
Beautiful wallpaper from 1920.
I was in a cute little old grandma lady.
So
It's nicely
Like
done.
that.
It was very nice, yeah.
Talisa went in there. She said when she went in there, you just had such a good energy about it, didn't it, babe?
It felt like home. Yeah, definitely felt like home.
Yeah.
She was one of the 15 people we brought through.
Not that you're planning on it actually happening or anything.
Made with expectations.
I like it. Oh, that's great. All right. Well, the Scripture says for us to weep with those who weep and to rejoice with those who rejoice. So we want to do that as a church family. We want to celebrate good things in each other's lives and then pray for each other when we have challenges and struggles. Today we are in, I believe, the 5th chapter of a world-famous author's book that we're studying. He's famous all throughout Faith Community Church in Reno. We are on chapter 5. Whatever that page is. Here's what we've gone through so far. Strategy so far. Let me ask you this. Be honest. Did anybody get a chance to read this chapter before you came today? Raise your hand. Dwayne, Danny, Lloyd. Thank you. You read the whole thing
I
already?
gave it away.
Sweet. We've got more you can give away too after that. Thank you for that. Thank you, Danny, for doing that. Here's what we've looked at. The very first week we talked about David facing the giant with confidence when everybody else ran away. Whenever Goliath came out and he roared, here's his intimidating roar that he gave, the Israelites and the people of God would be intimidated. They'd tuck their tails. I'm sure that's our kid banging against the wall out there.
They got musical instruments today.
Oh, they got musical instruments. Great.
That's music.
It's exciting.
That's our future band.
Yeah, our future worship team right there. The second area that we looked at was David embracing the benefit package of defeating the giant. Just like Crystal said, Crystal's already envisioning what life will be like once they get in this house. David was already thinking about what life would be like once that giant was defeated, and he liked the idea of his family not having to be taxed, of getting the king's wife, and the third one, which was less taxes. He liked the benefit package, and he was already envisioning what life could be like were he to defeat Goliath. An important strategy, I think, is visualizing the good outcome instead of visualizing the bad outcome. And we do that a lot in life, because oftentimes something will happen and we'll get very fearful and we'll play out the worst case scenario. For instance, let's say that there's something that's been bothering me, and I need to stand up at work at the base, and I need to tell the truth about something going on, and truth needs to be spoken to power. Truth needs to be spoken to power. I could get very afraid and play out the worst case scenario, and the worst case scenario could look like this. Oh man, if I stand up for myself and point out what's going wrong, I could get fired. No job, no income. Wife won't be happy. I will be homeless. Wife will find a husband with a job who likes a baby. We will be searching for a new place, and life will just get worse. And I can play out a worst case scenario as good as anybody in the world. That's fear. And that's what fear will have us do. Guess what the opposite of fear is? Good answer. Hope. Hope is the opposite of fear. Why not take the very same thing that I'm fearing and envision a good outcome? Because 95% of the time, the worst case scenario doesn't happen anyway. But that's what fear will tell us. Fear is a liar. That's what fear is. Hope has us envision a good outcome that could be completely different. For instance, maybe they'll say, Donnie, we appreciate you standing up and actually addressing that. We want to put you on part of a strategy team to help fix that problem. And it could have a completely better outcome when we replace fear with hope. And that's what we're talking about when it comes to envisioning a good outcome instead of allowing fear to cripple us and to immobilize us. And then Lee talked to us about overcoming criticisms from those around us, which is what happened to David. He had King Saul, who was not supportive and thought that he would never be able to defeat the Goliath. He was too small, too much of a runt. He doesn't have the right armor. He's not experienced. And he heard pushback from his brothers. They opposed him because his brothers were jealous of him. And he heard it from the giant himself. Goliath looked at him and said, "Why do you come at me with sticks? You're just a kid. Yeah, you're handsome and you're ruddy, but you're just a boy. And you come against me as a giant? You can't defeat me." So David overcame all those criticisms to do the right thing. And then last week, James talked about whatever the challenge is today, we can have confidence as we face that challenge because of the victories that we've had in the past. We've made it through times just like we're facing today. Every one of you in here, whatever your challenge may be, you've conquered a similar or maybe even as difficult challenge in the past. So we allow our past victories to breathe life into our current challenge or into our present moment. Now today, we're looking at this idea. We can have confidence when we know we're doing the right thing. And doing the right thing is worth dying for. Doing the right thing is worth dying for. Tell me something, or tell me someone in this world who has taken up a cause for something that was an injustice, a need that needed to be met, a change that needed to be brought about, something in our world that was broken, and they said, enough is enough. I am taking up the cause, and I don't care if it kills me. It's worth dying for.
Rosa Parks.
Why did you take my example? We'll talk about that one in a minute.
Another one.
Rosa Parks, that they call the mother of the civil rights movement. Dr. Martin Luther King obviously was a proclaimer and a promoter of that, but it was this woman in the fourth seat of the bus that day that stood up that says, "No, I'm not moving. You're not putting me in the back of the bus. Not going to happen." She stood up. What other organizations, programs can you think of where somebody said, I've got to do something about this. I've got to do the right thing here.
Red Cross.
Red Cross. Do you know any history behind that?
No.
Clara Barton.
And what, with Red Cross, or is that different, Dwayne?
With,
Okay. Do you know any history on the Red Cross?
she helped wounded soldiers in the Civil War.
Okay. Right, it does date back that far to the Civil War. Talisa?
I'm thinking of two different ones. The first one I was thinking of is, what is it, the women's Catholic charities who stood up against the Obamacare for birth control. I mean, that was a big thing.
Yeah, on a political front.
Yeah. I
The
don't-
whole contraceptive issue.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember who that was, but I'm sure y'all know who I'm talking
Little Sisters of the Poor.
about. Yeah, okay.
Little Sisters of the Poor, the Catholic women's organization that said, you will not force us to pay for abortions, and you can't force us to give away contraceptives because it violates our religious liberty. Yep.
Mother Teresa,
Mother Teresa.
From like a poor standpoint of, going to kind of India
Yep.
and helping.
Yeah. Helping those with disease. And another one?
the other one I was thinking of was a gentleman, I don't know, you'll know his name, but he was a speaker at your D-Men program where his mother ended up dying because she was nursing him and they didn't have milk, and he was one of the starters of the WIC program.
Yes. Yeah, his name's John Perkins. And he's another big figure. He's kind of like he was like the next Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He kind of took up the mantle of the civil rights movement. And his mother died breastfeeding him so that he could have milk. And he was almost beat to death in Louisiana by security guards. They stuck a fork down his throat and twisted the fork. And was beat within an inch of his life. And then he ended up, amazing story, he was in our classroom in Oregon and I heard him speak. And when he talked about them throwing gas on his face and him coming out, his eyes as big as baseballs and not being able to breathe, and then to hear him say to our class, which was full of Caucasians, he said, I wanted to hate you. I wanted to hate you. But what was that going to help? And the Lord got a hold of his heart and said, you need to forgive. What can you do if you forgive? And it's a powerful real life story of a man who's alive today. Yeah, John Perkins. And he took up that mantle of kind of non-violent behavior, which was, the whole thrust of the civil rights movement was to fulfill Matthew chapter 7, which is to love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, and pray for those who mistreat you without violence. Did you have another one, Sandra?
Lila Rose.
And what was...
She was the founder of Live Action, which is anti-abortion.
Okay.
What about Jesus?
Yeah, we shouldn't leave him out of Sunday mornings, I guess.
No.
Yeah, he took up some pretty good causes.
Yeah.
How about the priest that went to live with the lepers in Hawaii?
Oh, yeah.
And I can't remember.
Father Damien.
Yes.
Father Damien, yeah, what an ambassador that he would go and become part of this leper colony to where it eventually, he lived with them. He didn't do the drive-by. He actually set up his tent and lived with the folks and ended up dying because of it, catching, I don't know if it was malaria, if it was leprosy, but whatever it was, he died with the people. But he wanted to get the gospel to them that much. And then these are kind of some political / spiritual examples, but there's other things that are just as right, that are important to you, that you're willing to die on that hill for. Let me give you one. It's in my book that I talked about. My dad went to 8 elementary schools in 2nd grade because the movie The Grapes of Wrath describes my dad's side of the family. They literally moved picking cotton and peaches from place to place, and that's how they lived. And because of that, he was taken to all these schools. So when he got married, the one thing he told my mom, he said, the one thing I'm going to stand up for and I will not budge on is my kids are not going to get drug around from school to school. They're going to have the security of being able to go to the same school. And for him, that was a conviction. Something, and you know what? I went to the same school. My whole elementary, junior high, high school, because my dad had conviction about something that was important to him, and it was a good thing. It was a right thing. Beth?
I'm the same thing. Up until the age of 10, I moved every single year. I never had the same school until my parents moved to Susanville. I couldn't figure out why they stayed there, and my mom admitted a couple years ago, she told my dad that they weren't moving anymore until we were done.
Yeah.
And I made sure when I had kids that we weren't moving. Because I hated it. I had no friends.
Right. It's tough. Especially, being a military brat happens all the time. It's really tough on them. But maybe it's been something for your kids where you say, I'm standing up. I have a conviction that my kids be raised in this kind of environment. Or my kids become part of this type of school or this type of a program because it's right and you're willing to stand up for it and you believe it. So my question for us today as we get into this passage, looking at the clock, as we get into this passage is this. What do you have a conviction for? What do you feel strongly enough about that you're willing to die on that hill if it were to come to that? What values do you have that are so important to you? Or let me say it another way. What do you see in the world that is so broken that you're gripped to take up the mantle to change it? Whatever it could be. We're going to get into why Talisa and I started this church, because that's one of the strong convictions we had of what we wanted to see happen. We'll get into that toward the end of the message here. Let's start with this verse. Wes, read this page for us.
Then the Philistines said...
Oh, read the top part too.
Oh, we must stand up for God, righteousness, and what is right. Then the Philistines said, the day I defy the ranks of Israel. Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God?
So yes, David did like the benefit package of a wife, taxes in Israel, and becoming wealthy. But he also saw something wrong with this bully named Goliath. Because this bully said, this day I defy the ranks of Israel. And he put down the God of Israel and the people who belong to the God of Israel. And David came to this place in his convictions where he says, who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? Enough is enough. He's not going to do this anymore. And I'm pretty sure David had confidence that he would defeat Goliath, but on the other side of it, I'm pretty sure David said, you know what? I could go down swinging here. I might not win this battle, but I'm willing to take up arms. And I'm willing to die for what I believe in. And he was convicted in his heart to take up that kind of belief and that kind of action to come against what was being wrong. Everybody else just put up with it. For 40 days, they let this Goliath speak to them in an intimidating way, and they let them speak about their God in such a humiliating way. And David said, no, this isn't going to happen anymore. And I think sometimes even in our own family, maybe you come from parents who are alcoholics or had some type of drug problem. And when it comes to you and your children, you stand up. Just like the scripture says, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. And you stand up and say, no, this is not going to continue in my family. I'm not going to have my children, I'm not going to pass this on. It's not going to be a generational sin in my family, and it's going to stop right here. And you stand up because you believe in it. David believed in what he was doing. He knew what he was doing was right. And here's a little test as we go through this. Oh, but first we got to talk about Rosa Parks again. Mario, read this for us.
The mother of the civil rights movement stood up for the injustice of black people by refusing to go to the back of the bus. Her name was Rosa Parks.
Yes. So when you go to Montgomery, you get on this bus and the same sounds they play that were there that day. And the bus driver who says you need to move, and her finally she said, you know, I'm not going to move today. She had moved before. Other people had moved. She said, I'm not moving. And they arrested her and they took her to jail. But from that, she had connections that spawned them boycotting the bus system for a year. And then the laws of segregation were broken because she stood up and she fought for what was right. And it became not just a piece of history, but it became a movement that was correcting an injustice that was done. And it wasn't, and then all what came out of the Jim Crow and a lot of other things, but the laws of segregation were changed. And this is all part of slavery and the Civil War and why we did what we did. But if it would not have been for her standing up and for her convictions and saying, nope, Goliath has been yelling long enough. Something has to change here. We have to do something about it. So what is a legitimate conviction that we should act on? Where this has to change and we're willing to put our behavior behind it. Because some people just get this idea of something they want to stand up for, but what they're standing up for is really born out of selfishness, or it's born out of a bias. And it's not necessarily born out of a biblical value. So I think the questions to ask is, are we acting on a conviction, first of all, that's biblical? Does my reaction or action to what I'm standing up for, is it grounded in Scripture? Is there a biblical principle for it? I think the idea of treating people of all colors with equal value is biblical, don't you?
Yes.
I have a hard time believing, although if we were living back in Alabama or Louisiana during the time of slavery, we might not have seen it for what we can see it with now. Because sometimes when you're part of culture, you get swept into things and you don't see that. But as I look back on that part of our history, I'm saddened. I don't know if you are. I'm hurt. Because I don't want to see anybody devalued like that. I don't care what color. I think that the good news of the gospel and the love of God is that we are all equal. Male, female, we are equal. And it doesn't matter what part of the country we come from. That's a biblical principle that we should be worth fighting for. Today when we do our lunch menu thing, or when we do our lunch talk, we're going to talk about, I want to be a church that's deep, this is deep, this is wide. I want to be a church that's deep and wide. Wide enough to accept any person regardless of their background, and deep enough that what happens in their life touches every aspect of who they are. I want to be deep, but I want us to be wide. Does it promote the good of all? Is it biblical? Does it promote the good of all? Does it enable yourself and others to enjoy their inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness? What document do we get that from? What? Close. Declaration of Independence. Thank you for that. We do have First Amendment rights, which is the right to have freedom of religious expression and liberty, which
Bear arms.
and the right to bear arms. Yeah. Yeah, that would be our Second Amendment, the right to bear arms. She's doing her history in church right now. Her history. I'm glad that the church could tie into your education. Okay. Does it enable you and yourself? So this is kind of something when it comes to us fighting for something. But I don't care what it is. Fight for something. Stand up for something. Fight for an injustice to seniors, if that's what it is. If there's something going on in your neighborhood, stand up for it and ask yourself, is it biblical? Is what I'm fighting a biblical principle? Does it promote the good of all? Does it enable yourself and others to enjoy the inalienable rights, don't say that past 3 times, of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness? Patty?
We must ask ourselves what bothers us, what needs to be changed in the world, what need really needs to be addressed.
Yeah. So as I look around, I've shared this with you before, but I look around at our broken society and broken families, and my mind and heart goes to broken marriages. And broken marriages and the nuclear family that breeds broken families. And then broken families breeds a fatherless society, motherless society. And everybody trying to find purpose and happiness and love and connection. And that's what raises our the number of people that go to jail, and that's why the opioid crisis is such a big crisis. And by the way, throwing money at the opioid crisis will never solve the problem. I know I'm getting political here, but until people find something worth changing, and they get a change in here, it's not going to solve our drug problem. We may cut off the supply, but people who are addicted will,
They'll find something
They'll
else.
find some place to, just like cutting off our guns, I don't believe is ever going to solve the problem of people misusing that. I think they will find it. But we must ask ourselves, what bothers us? What needs to be changed in the world? What need really needs to be addressed? I think this is where David was. He said, you know what? I'm not putting up with this anymore. This needs to be changed here. And it can be something very simple in your life. As I've been talking about this, has any example come to you about maybe something you've gotten involved with? Or you've seen someone get involved with?
All right, I'll speak up.
Oh, thank you, Sharon.
I was in the CASA program for 10 years and it all has to do with abused children in the court system. And that really changed my view of how parents don't give a rip sometimes about their kids, and they'll let them go into the system just to get away from teaching them proper things. And so I spent a lot of time going into children's homes and looking in the refrigerator and there'd be nothing there. How can that even happen in this day in our country, not have food in the refrigerator? It just amazed me. And so I did it for probably longer than I should have, but it did affect me, and I'm sure that, there's a lot of women out there now that are helping where they can.
Mm-hmm. Good. Lee, you've been involved with...
I'm involved with Big Brothers, Big Sisters, and when you had a little, his name was Zach, and he was a foster kid because both his mother and his father were drug abusers, and then his father died, and his mother couldn't handle him. He got into the foster care system, and there's some real problems there, I can tell you that. But when you have a kid that you really like, and all he has in the whole world is all his possessions can be held up in a garbage sack, it's pretty sad. Pretty sad. And all you do in Big Brothers Big Sisters is you become a positive role model for them. And today Zach is a good kid and has his own family and stuff. And then I was involved with James. James is getting ready to go in the Navy now. So it was, you see some light that you helped these young men see that there's a different way of life than what they're used to.
Someone else have an example? Those are great. Mario and then G.
So for about the last 30 years, I've been involved in supporting different nonprofits. But when I first got started with all of that, it was, I was working with a literacy program in Redwood City, California, to help these 7th, 8th graders, kids, Latin kids in particular, who were doing very poorly in school. And the idea was to help them, just by encouraging them to read and to help them. I was working with this one kid, he was in 7th grade, but his reading skills were 2nd grade. And he was really caught up in some other, you could already see his interest away from anything academic and getting into the gangs and all of this stuff. So this was part of an intervention program to help people, to help these kids. And as much as I tried to work with him, he wouldn't show up. His grandmother would bring him to, the sessions, the meetings that we were supposed to have. He was only interested at the time was this lowrider magazines and things that he wanted to read, which is something that I have since my high school days I've been completely against because of where it leads. So it was a real challenge, but it's one of the things that I believe there's a lot of, just like Lee pointed out, a lot of kids who get left behind, and nobody, there's a lot of indifference towards them, and what, daily life, school, academic life, basically. So for me, it's something that drives me to want to help people. And today, just to bring it forward, I'm actually working on a business plan of sorts of how to help kids, high school kids, and do some other, and other people really who need technical schools, who need vocational schools, and how I can help it out. And I've talked to Lee a little bit about this. And trying to come up with a framework and work with the schools and whoever else in the area to be able to provide them, a kind of a broader view of what's out there and what can be done.
That's good. Thank you. Jean?
I just met a man here, and you know that is an advocate to a state senator. He's an advocate for seniors. And he has been working on some problems. For example, a nice couple sold their big home and got a smaller home. They had moved in and been there for a couple of months. She had the beginnings of Alzheimer's. There's a knock on the door one day, and these people came and said, "We are with the state. We understand that you folks can't take care of yourself anymore, and we are taking care of you." They said, "We are going to give you 10 minutes to pack a bag." And they took those people, put them in a van, and took them to a nursing home. Never let them make a phone call. Had them sign this paperwork. They went in, took all of their belongings, then had a power of attorney to go in and take all the cash out of the bank. This is a true story. And this agency is well and alive. I just found out about this, and I'm going to continue to read more and find out more.
Yeah.
How and why can this happen to our seniors? They had a daughter. She couldn't stop it.
Interesting.
Yes, very interesting.
What agency?
I don't know. I have to do some more research.
I'm a little nervous. I'm considered a senior now at 50. According to Teglius Park, I'm a senior. We're seniors. Well, I'm not. My wife isn't. I am.
She's still in her 30s.
Yeah, it wouldn't matter if she was. If I ever told you that, I'd be in so much trouble I'd never preach again. Come in on crutches next week.
I will find out more.
Yeah, that's good. So here's a little heart check you can always do when it comes to really standing up and fighting for something. Ask yourself this question. Is what I'm fighting for just about me? Or is it about helping somebody beyond me? Because if it's about helping somebody other than you, it's probably a good, legitimate thing. If it's just because you want life to be better for you, then it might be prompted by more selfish motives. But if God's putting something on your heart, God puts people on our heart. You ever had that happen where you're just going through your regular week and all of a sudden a person's face comes into your mind and their name? And it's like the Lord is saying, hey, you need to talk to this person. You need to call them, see how they're doing. I'm pretty sure there will be kids that come to James one day and say, hey, thanks for being my coach those 2 years. Because maybe I didn't have a dad and you treated me like a dad. Thank you for being my coach. Thank you. All of us, just like David, we have to have things that and here's what Elliot, I don't have it there. Elizabeth Elliot said, anything that's worth living for is worth dying for. Anything that's worth living for is worth dying for, if it's worth living for it. Lee, you had one last thing there?
Well, I volunteer a lot of time at TMCC to help the young kids in the diesel technology program. And a lot of these kids are Hispanic. They are. And where they come from and their families came from, this is a big step for them, college, and to learn a trade so that they're useful. And my thing is am I making a difference in their world?
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you out there making a difference in someone else's life?
Mm.
And that's what it's all about. If you're not here, what I always tell these kids is I got a library and it's getting dusty in the back because there's so many books. That I'm teaching you this stuff so you can pass my library on to the next generation.
Right. That's good. That's good. So we're going to close with this. And this is a little bit of afterwards today during our lunch. We're going to talk a little bit about this, our church, our fellowship here. We're going to talk about who are we, what's this church about, where are we going, what does it mean to be a part of this fellowship? Because some of you don't know. You've been coming here for a while and you're not real sure. I'm not sure where I'm going. I'm not sure what the church stands for, what their beliefs are. Don't know how it's structured. Don't know what the goals are. Not quite sure where we're headed. We're going to answer those questions today during our lunchtime. I think you'll find it hopefully inspirational and helpful. But the reason why Talisa and I, and you can jump in here, babe, at any time. The reason why we wanted to start a church 2.5 years ago, because we didn't wake up one morning and just say, oh, we should start a church. It's been on our hearts for a while, but here's some of the reasons why. So we're going to read these bullets. Let's start over here, Danny, with you.
I wanted people to know that they can have a place to belong even before they believe.
Yeah, and interesting, I can't believe this. Here we are at the chaplain's training, and they've got a new phrase for the military now. You know what it is? Belong, believe, become.
Oh.
Yeah, they stole it from me. I know what they did. But I wanted this because here's what I think. If people can belong to something even before they believe, maybe some of you are sitting here right now going, you know, I'm not quite sure where I'm at on that spiritual journey spectrum. I want you to know it's okay. It's okay. You just keep coming and you just give the Lord a chance in your life. You can be a part of this while you're on that journey of believing, because I believe one day you will believe and then you will become who the Lord wants you to become. So let's do the next one. Who's my next reader? You ready? Number 2, the second bullet.
I wanted people to know they can be in a safe place to work out their spiritual journey with other people who will genuinely care about them.
Very good. Very nice. So the second one, this is really important to me. If you come to this place on a Sunday morning, I want you to know that my wife and I and the other people who are here genuinely care about you as a person. And that I care. I care about your spiritual life. I care about you. I want to see you be everything God's called you to be, because I do care. We didn't have to do this. But we care. And I want us to be the most caring community. When someone walks through those doors, they just feel the love. And they feel the friendliness. And they feel like they're not here because they're checking off the church box on a Sunday. They're here because they care. And sometimes we go to church not for us, but because we get to care about somebody else that day. And it doesn't have anything to do with maybe something we get out of it. But I want us to genuinely care with not ulterior motives, but with godly motives. The third one, Brooke.
I wanted people to know that their spiritual life and its development is more important than anything else in this world.
Okay. Nadara, you want to read number 4?
I wanted people to know that God has given each one of us gifts, strengths, skills, talent, and abilities that we can use in the context of a spiritual community.
Yeah. I want you to be able to do what God's called you to do within this spiritual community and beyond. But I want to be the person who looks at you and says, man, I see these gifts in your life. I see these strengths in your life. I see God working in you, and I want to draw that out of you. I want our spiritual community to be a place where you get to take your God-given skills, gifts, talents, abilities, strengths, and use those within this context and be trained to use those outside of this context as well. Let's start in the back. Cheryl, the next one.
I want people to feel equipped with biblical life skills when they leave our spiritual community, so they feel confident in facing everyday issues.
Yeah, every time you come, I want you to leave here going, man, I got something today. I got a skill, I got a strategy, I got a word from the Lord that's going to help me in my thoughts, in my emotions, in my life, in my relationships, in my desires. I want you to feel equipped, like it was worth your time to come. And let's see, who wants to read next? Jean, is it Lily? Is that, was it?
It's Ellen.
Nellie. Nellie, you want to read?
Ellie.
What?
Ellie.
Her name changed already to Ellie? Just Nellie a second ago. Ellie, you want to read the second bullet for us?
Certainly. I want people to be excited about what God is doing in their life and want to invite us to experience the same thing. So they invite them to our spiritual family.
I want you to get so much out of Sunday mornings that you want to tell somebody that you're connected with, hey, you got to come to church with me because of what I feel when I go, because I get help, because it's alive. God is there. That's what I want you. I think Jean is here because Sherry invited her.
That's correct.
Good job, Sherry. I think that Nadara and Keith are here because Donnie invited them. Is that right?
Good job, Donnie.
And some of you are here because people invited you and you enjoy it. That's what I want. I want you to enjoy it. If you're not enjoying it, you let us know how you can enjoy it. We'll change whatever we need to change for you. Let's do that last one there. Valerie, can you read it for us?
I want people to know that being Christian is more than how big the building is, how big the church budget is, how many bodies are in the seats, but an authentic, growing relationship with God and others.
Okay. Bill?
I want people to know that they have permission to fulfill what God is calling them to do for their life. And we, as a church, want to support that and encourage that.
And the last one, Dwayne?
I want people to feel that their time in church is one of the most worthwhile activities of their entire week.
And everybody said?
Amen.
Amen. Good. It's time for communion. Good to have you here today, James. Appreciate that.
Yeah. Here.
I meant this James and Jesse. Jesse. Man, you changed his name too. It used to be James.
Can I just add one thing?
Yeah, Danny.
When when we talk about fighting and not fighting, but like fighting for a cause or something, sometimes it's real easy to get discouraged if you don't see results immediately, The Lord will tell you when to stop fighting. Sometimes you might have to fight your entire life. So sometimes you got to sow seeds and walk away. You don't get to see what it produces, but the Lord will tell you what to do.
Amen. Thank you for that. Perseverance is good. Babe, did you have something?
Just, if any of you need prayer, we've created a prayer team and we want more people to be on our prayer team. But if you need prayer, please see us. Donnie doesn't have a badge, I didn't know necessarily. He needs a badge, but obviously he is part of our prayer team as
He's
well.
leading our prayer team.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if you need prayer, please come see one of us. We'll be wearing badges on Sunday morning, and if you're interested in becoming part of the team, let us know. But we're here for you. We want to love on you and lift you up in prayer. Absolutely.
You didn't think Donnie needed a trophy?
No.
I made one for him. I did make one for him.
So, Jesse, do you know how much they trust you, this family over here? They're always talking about they trust their kids to you.
He is the godfather.
Yeah, he's the
That's
godfather.
Yeah.
Is it? It's good to have people that trust you. Good for you. All right, let's take our wafers today, if we would. Did I get one? Oh, thanks. All right. Let's take our wafers. Lord, thank you for this good day today. And as I look at this teenager named David, so they say he was probably 17 or 18, who was standing up and willing to take up a cause that was going to help so many people. And he didn't want people bad-mouthing the God of Israel. And he was willing to stand up for it, and really, I think, willing to die for it. Put convictions within us that are so deep that we're willing to stand up for them and for what's right and for what's righteous and for the causes of God. Put those within us, Lord. Give us desires to be a part of things, just to do good. Thank you for everyone in this room. But I'll bet you almost everyone in this room is fighting for something or someone. They're putting themselves on the line to help a program or a person or an organization to be better, to change lives, to save lives, to help people. Continue to do that within us, we pray. We think of you on the cross, that you made it possible because of your brokenness we could have life. Let's eat together. And Jesus said, as often as you remember this, I want you to think of the cup as my forgiveness, which is poured out for you. And that by drinking this, you are renewing once again the cleansing and the forgiveness and the washing that comes from God's Spirit. As we drink this, we get to enjoy that afresh and anew. So we open up our hearts and our minds, and we drink in again your forgiveness. Let's drink together. We pray all this in Jesus' name, and everyone said, Amen. Amen. We have 2 more weeks on this, and then we're going to go into